Hi, I'm Andy, and this is my lesson on how to compare strings in Java. In this lesson, I'll show you how to use two different methods to compare string objects. Equals to determine if two strings exactly equal each other, and compareTo to determine how far alphabetically one string is from another. Let's get started. Comparing strings is a common programming task. As just one simple example, think about what happens when you enter a password into a web page. Some code executes which compares your entered string with the actual password string. Let's start by making a simple version of just such a program. Now, in a real program, the code would probably fetch the actual password from some sort of database, but we'll keep things simple here and just store the password as a string constant. As a reminder, here's two important things to remember about constants. First, we have to use the keyword final to tell the Java compiler that this string reference can't ever be changed. Second, by convention, we put our reference's name in all caps. Next, I'll ask the user to enter a password and store their input into a string variable. After that, we need to compare these two strings, password and entered password. To do that, we need to use the equals method. This method returns a Boolean value, either true if the two strings exactly match, or false if they don't. Let's add a call to the equals method to our program and store its result in a Boolean variable called match. Notice that when we use the equals method, we pass one parameter, the string we want our object to compare itself to. Lastly, we'll print match's value using the println method and the concatenation operator. By the way, we could have reversed these two strings. Asking password if it equals entered password is equivalent to asking entered password if it equals password. Now let's see what happens. So the equals method returned false, which makes sense because my entered string does not exactly match the password string. Let's make sure equals returns true when the two strings do exactly match. Good, so that worked. The equals method is both very easy to use and very useful. As you write more and more programs in Java, you'll probably find yourself using this method quite often. Now let's look at the compareTo method. It's a little more complicated than equals because it returns an integer, not a Boolean. The API's description of exactly what that integer represents is a bit vague here, so we'll just experiment with the method and see what it does. We'll start by making 5 string objects: apple, banana, another apple, blueberry, and kiwi. Then let's just print out the value that gets returned when we ask apple to compare itself to banana. And now we'll see what we get when we ask apple to compare itself to kiwi. Based on these results, it looks like compareTo returns an integer indicating how much bigger or smaller the string is than the other string, according to the alphabetical order of their first letters. For example, alphabetically, the first letter in apple is 1 spot less than the first letter in banana, so our first compareTo returned -1. And the A in apple is 10 spots less than the K in kiwi, so our second compareTo returned -10. Okay, this can be a bit confusing, so let's see some more examples. First, let's do this one. That returns 0 because the two strings are exactly equal. Neither one is alphabetically ahead of the other. So it looks like we just discovered another way to check if two strings are equal. See if compareTo returns 0. How about this example? This should make sense. We already learned that the A is 10 spots less than K, so K must be 10 spots greater than A. Okay, here's our last example. Here's what happened. The compareTo method checked the first letters in both strings and found them equal, so it moved on to the second letter. A in banana is 11 spots less than the L in blueberry, so the method returned -11. By the way, if those letters were also equal, the compareTo method would have moved on to the third letter, and so on. These compareTo examples illustrate an important tip for learning any programming language. If you are ever confused about what a certain method or block of code does, just play around with it and see what happens. With enough experimenting, you can figure out pretty much anything. And that wraps up this lesson on comparing strings in Java. I'm Andy. Thanks for watching and coding with me today.